Catastrophes, earthquakes, EMPs, volcanoes, asteroids, and war. Earthquakes. What is an earthquake? Among the most feared natural processes are earthquakes. When the stability of the ground you stand on fails, it is a feeling to never forget. You see, we live riding on huge tectonic plates, which are basically huge sections of rock floating on molten material deep in the Earth's crust. These plates move about and are slowly recycled back into the center of the Earth. As this recycling happens, earthquakes are sometimes caused by this seismic activity in different areas of the world. Vibration, shaking and shifting occurs as underground rock crashes, goes under and or over the rock, or releases pressure. Earthquakes mostly occur near fault lines or where tectonic plates meet, but may also sprout in other areas. Mountain ranges identify where there may be fault lines, or past or ongoing seismic activity. Volcanoes arise from seismic activity, which may eventually erupt and may cause earthquakes. Obviously, earthquakes cause destruction of whatever is on the surface by collapsing rock, earth, and trees, through sudden shifting or opening of the ground, flooding, and collapse of any manufactured structures. Of course, a crisis may quickly arise in the aftermath of an earthquake. The Richter scale is often used to measure the severity of an earthquake, where earthquakes are measured in a scale from 1.0 to 10.0. A minor earthquake, 1.0 to 3.0, may be mild in strength, lasting only seconds and causing perhaps few deaths and mild property damage. Magnitudes 4.0 to 8.0 are considered potentially disastrous earthquakes and may inflict around thousands of deaths and millions of dollars in damage. Any earthquake over 8.0 is potentially catastrophic and may cause many thousand deaths and over millions of dollars in damage. It is difficult to say the minimum scale of an earthquake that will bring a crisis. Factors may render even a small earthquake destructive and deadly. Some factors include geographic location, population density, nearby bodies of water, and the area's construction standards. Examples of earthquakes. Again, earthquakes, especially minor ones, occur often and in many areas of the world. Very recently, in 2023, there have been several earthquakes around the world. A 3.8 magnitude earthquake occurred 14 miles from Malibu, California in the USA on July 2nd at 6:27 a.m. A 5.3 magnitude occurred 22 miles from San Juan in San Juan Province, Argentina on June 30th at 8:57 a.m. and a 5.5 occurred 58 miles from Labasa, Fiji. Many years ago, I experienced the tremors of an earthquake in the Dominican Republic. It was during school hours in my childhood in what I believe to be the fall of 1988. I looked at some records of the time and found that there was a 5.7 magnitude earthquake in the Mona Passage, an area in the Caribbean Sea about 140 miles east of the city of Santo Domingo. I recall during this short event my teacher became terribly scared and dropped to her knees in prayer. Me and most of my other classmates followed her actions, and were all terribly shaken by the short occurrence. It only lasted about 3 to 10 seconds, and there may have been more than one tremor. At that time, we were all in a second level of a school building and felt the tremor perhaps more than those on the ground level. I recall we felt extremely relieved and thankful as it quickly stopped, and my teacher took much of the rest of the school time that day to recover and talk to us about what had just occurred, as well as other of her many personal stories. Nothing came of my experience of that distant earthquake. No damage or deaths were reported, but many around the world have not been that fortunate. Surely, destruction and death has and will occur as a result from earthquakes, and crises of many kinds have and will ensue. For example, in June of 2022, Afghanistan suffered a magnitude 6.2 earthquake that caused massive damages, over 1,000 deaths and over 2,000 injured. the provinces of Paktia, Khost, and Nangarhar were areas of that nation most affected. There, over 10,000 homes were destroyed or severely damaged, and many factors came together to exacerbate the already severe event. A multi-pronged crisis followed with shortages and the collapse of many goods and services. How can earthquakes affect you? In addition to the deaths and injury to people, the destruction of homes and infrastructure may usher other crises. Shortages of goods and services may affect people weeks to years after an earthquake. An earthquake's effects may impact roads, rails, and pipelines, all of which may severely disrupt transportation of goods and services. Flooding may occur if the water flow of rivers or lakes are suddenly shifted by the earthquake. This shift may bring many of the ill effects of flooding. Furthermore, earthquakes may affect water and food supplies in a variety of ways. Electricity and communications can also be severely affected by a physically destructive earthquake, as power lines and other infrastructure may be damaged or destroyed during the event. On and off-grid resources may be impacted if you are directly impacted by a destructive earthquake. But I believe off-grid resources may be more resilient and able to help during such events. How living off the grid can help during an earthquake. Off-grid resources may be more resilient to damage from earthquakes, such as water, food, energy, and communication resources and services. Water. Utility water is easily damaged by an earthquake, as it heavily depends on underground water plumbing that can be damaged by shifting rock and gravel. For example, groundwater may be impacted by an earthquake, as this ground source may become mixed with pollutants and earth, thus contaminated or destroyed. In this case, the off-gridder will surely benefit from stored water and extraction from clean surface bodies of water. If your rainwater collecting system survives the earthquake, rain collecting may be a reliable source of water after the earthquake. Food. Crops and farms may be damaged or destroyed during an earthquake. Food may become scarce, especially if the affected area depends on locally produced foods. If an off-gridder can produce all or part of her food even after an earthquake, this can alleviate local food shortages. This food supply may even help others in the affected area temporarily. Utility electric. The off-gridder will surely benefit even if the utility grid around her collapses. Electric power is very fragile per my experience. For example, a downed tree, post, or tower can bring down the power for an entire area for days or longer. As a producer of energy, if your home and energy producing equipment survive the earthquake, you may be among the few that has electricity in the impacted area. As off-grid electricity does not depend on large plants or infrastructure easily damaged by earthquakes, the off-gridder may become the damaged area's only supplier of electricity. Utility communication. With utility electricity, down may go utility communications. If the off-gridder has stored electric charge in batteries, she may use that to power up communication equipment. Again, in the aftermath of an earthquake, off-gridders may be among the few or only people able to communicate with the outside world. This is, of course, if your radio antenna and other equipment survive the earthquake. But you may be ready to provide help in search and location and rescue operations in the aftermath of an earthquake using off-grid communications. And many radios do not require much power to run. A few dozen watts of energy will do the job most of the time, which is easily supplied by 12-volt batteries. Electromagnetic pulse event, EMP. What is an EMP? An EMP is a natural or artificial brief burst of electromagnetic energy. An EMP may occur as an electromagnetic field, as a magnetic field, or as conducted electric current. The electromagnetic interference caused by an EMP can disrupt communications and, if strong enough, damage electronic equipment. Examples of EMPs: lightning EMPs, meteoric EMPs, and coronal or solar mass ejections CMEs, are examples of naturally occurring EMPs. As you know, lightning strikes occur often all over the planet. Of course, they can directly damage electrical equipment and infrastructure with the voltage and overload they produce, but also there may be lightning outbreaks that may, for example, damage multiple critical utility electrical facilities in a very short period. Along with the electrical and physical damage of lightning, fires caused by lightning may cause damage far beyond the strike points. The coronal mass ejections, CMEs, or solar storms, may create electromagnetic fields, EMPs, that may damage artificial Earth orbiting satellites, as well as ground-based electrical utility infrastructure. Among the strongest CMEs recorded was the Carrington event. It occurred on September 1st and 2nd of 1859 and was reported to cause strong auroral displays globally, and it caused sparking and fires in multiple telegraph stations. It is estimated that a Carrington-like CME event today would cause severe widespread electrical disruptions. In 1921, a less severe solar storm occurred, and widespread radio communications disruption was reported. More notably, in March of 1989, a solar geomagnetic storm disabled electrical services to large parts of Quebec, Canada. And in July of 2012, a Carrington-class solar superstorm narrowly missed Earth on its trajectory. Other naturally occurring EMPs may have severe localized disabling or destructive effects on the now vast worldwide electrical grid and its equipment. The EMP caused by a nuclear blast is among the most feared types of EMPs today, as it may be much more destructive and its targeting deliberate. The effects of a nuclear blast are bad enough, but the EMP caused by the blast will surely bring an extra layer of crises to the dire situation. Furthermore, there may be non-nuclear weapons that may be exclusively designed to cause EMPs. How can an EMP affect you? Again, the most direct effect of an EMP may be the failure of grid electricity. However, off-grid electricity may be affected in the same way, as many electronic equipment will be affected similarly. But the interconnectivity of the utility grid is its largest weakness, as damaging voltage may quickly spread through the connected grid. Off-grid electronics are much less subject to damage from an EMP due to their isolation and simplicity. And even if damaged, off-grid electrical components can be quickly repaired or replaced. Furthermore, an array of other crises may surely follow an outage of the utility grid. Shortages of all kinds may ensue: fuel, communication services, and food and water, as stores, warehouses, service centers, and other facilities may be out of power. How living off the grid may help during an EMP. Utility electric. Again, the damage caused by an EMP to the off-gridder may be localized and quickly repaired, or the off-gridder may keep components under EMP protective covers or keep protected spare parts that may be used to quickly replace defective ones. EMPs are likely to affect mostly sensitive and small electronic components, such as circuit board components, so simpler, robust components may not be affected, such as those found in basic solar PV systems. Utility communication. Radio equipment may escape the effects of an EMP if stored in EMP-resistant wrapping or containers. Some EMP protection methods and technologies will be discussed in Part 2 of this book. Lastly, in the aftermath of an EMP, you may be among the few points of communication available, thus a likely source of relief for the area. Volcanic event. What is a volcanic event? A volcano is a channel into the hot molten material under the Earth's crust. This molten area of the planet is called the mantle. A volcanic event is when lava, steam, and tephra, small rocks, overflow, erupt, or explode through the volcano's opening, the caldera. Volcanoes may exist in high peaks, plain terrain, or under the sea. Huge pockets of magma, molten rock, rise toward the Earth's crust and accumulate. At times, these pockets find or create one or more fissures or cracks on the crust that release pressure by ejecting lava, steam, and tephra. Volcanoes are then created by the slow accumulation of erupted lava. How can a volcanic event impact you? Volcanic events may cause various degrees of destruction to natural and human-made environments by causing fires, ash rain, lava flows, and by blocking sunlight. These can disrupt or destroy plant, animal, and human life in a variety of ways, including direct or indirect destruction or damage. For example, you may escape the fires and lava of a volcanic event, but your food and water supply may be destroyed by the ensuing fires, lava flow, or ash cover. Utility, electricity, and communications may be disabled or destroyed in the same manner. Your home may be destroyed or permanently damaged, even if it escapes the initial fires or lava runs, perhaps through ash cover. The fallen ash may collect meters high and bury some or all of your home. The ash may then become a heavy slush with rain and other contact with water, and further damage human-made structures. Examples of volcanic events. Recently, the Cumbre Vieja volcanic ridge in the Canary island of La Palma erupted in the fall of 2021. The lava flow covered 1,000 hectares of land and prompted the evacuation of about 7,000 people. Furthermore, it destroyed more than 3,000 buildings. That very December 2021, an eruption began on the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai submarine volcano in the Tongan archipelago in the southern Pacific Ocean. The eruption then spectacularly exploded on January 15, 2022, causing the largest atmospheric blast ever recorded in history. The eruption caused tsunamis in several continental coasts. Fortunately, due to the remoteness of the volcano, only about 4 people lost their lives. However, innumerable sea life perished or were affected, and the environmental damage it caused to reefs and marine life may last years. Often, eruptions can affect nearby populations of human and animal life for years after the event. How living off the grid may help during a volcanic event. Given the survival after a catastrophic event, the off-gridder may benefit from a sustainable lifestyle, even in the aftermath of a volcanic event. I believe due in part to the greater ability to quickly relocate and the off-grid resources for water, food, electricity, and communications. Also due to the off-gridder's expanded knowledge and skills in survival and efficient methods. Water. Apart from direct impact from lava flows, fires, or heavy ashfall, locally stored water should remain consumable. Rain collectors are likely to be affected by any kind of ashfall, so container stored water sources may be the most reliable during and after a volcanic event. A groundwater source may also be intact because water reservoirs may be tens of meters or more underground. Surface bodies of water may be affected, but if undisturbed, the off-gridder may have access to those for usable water. Again, stored water may be the most reliable, perhaps the only source of water immediately available during and after a volcanic event. Food. Locally grown food land may be affected by ash or ash cloud cover or both, and outdoor farm animals may be directly affected by ash cover unless kept in covered structures. The same goes for outdoor fruit plants. But stored food stocks may help the off-gridder weather the effects of a volcanic event until it passes or relief arrives. The off-gridder may have the ability to store large amounts of food and keep it fresh even without electricity. Utility electric. Solar and wind and other alternative energy generators will likely be affected by a volcanic event. Ash may cover solar modules, and lava flow and fire may destroy all in its path. The sunlight may be blocked for days or longer after the event. If your site remained unaffected by fire, then you may be able to remove ash from solar modules and use the system to generate some charge. But stored energy in batteries may be among the few options as a source of electricity in the aftermath of a volcanic event. Alternatively, you may be able to run a fueled generator for short periods, to use tools and appliances, for example, and even charge batteries. Remember, generators may run on liquid propane, diesel, kerosene, and other fuels. Utility communication. You may be able to communicate using off-grid communication equipment in the aftermath of a volcanic event, but only if your antennas have survived direct impact, fire, or lava flows. Like during other crises, you may be among the few able to communicate after a volcanic event, and others will likely need your help with communicating in the aftermath. Batteries may be used to power radio communication equipment.
Asteroid impacts. Tunguska-like asteroid impact. What is a Tunguska-like asteroid impact? Although rare asteroid impacts may cause widespread crises, and some have happened throughout human history. In 1908, a 12 megaton blast was caused by what scientists believe was an exploding asteroid. The blast occurred over the sparsely populated East Siberia taiga. For comparison, the Hiroshima bomb blast was a 15 kiloton blast. The explosion flattened and burned an estimated 80 million trees over a 2,150 square kilometers area of forest. The object is estimated to have been a stony asteroid, about 55 meters in size. Examples of Tunguska-like asteroid impacts. On February 15, 2013, a 450 kiloton explosion was caused by an asteroid airburst over Chelyabinsk Oblast, Russia. Over 1,400 people were injured, and some 7,200 buildings in 6 cities were damaged. The asteroid was 13,500 tons in weight and about 20 meters in size. Like the Tunguska event, this asteroid blast had the potential to cause a major disaster if it detonated over a populated area. A direct hit over a populated area has not been recorded in history, but it is obviously a possibility worth being prepared for. How can a Tunguska-like asteroid impact affect you? Tunguska-like asteroid blasts can cause destruction of all types of structures, natural or artificial. They are nature's hydrogen atomic bombs. In fact, Tunguska-type explosions are magnitudes of the largest atomic bombs. So the damage could be apocalyptic. For example, the pressure wave and heat alone may cause the first layer of destruction in a large area. Then a cascade of other problems may follow, like spreading fires, secondary structure collapses, rolling utility outages, and continuing death and injuries due to the hellish conditions around the blast zone. Additionally, the blast may produce an EMP that would surely damage the electrical grid and electronic equipment kilometers from the hypocenter. Shortages of water and food in the wider blast area would be caused by spreading disruptions. For example, water services far from the hypocenter may be impacted due to damage to treatment plants and plumbing near the blast area. And there may be damaged roads, and many vehicles blocking roads for days or longer, and traffic signals may be out of service for longer periods. Lastly, there may be an array of additional problems indirectly caused by the asteroid impact. So surely such an event would change life for anyone. How living off-grid may help during a Tunguska-like asteroid impact? Given survival and relative safety, those off the grid may be able to more easily cope with the effects of an asteroid impact. Your survival skills, technical knowledge, and efficient methods may serve you in many ways, as may your off-grid structures, stores, and equipment. Water. Stored water can be used to weather the likely shortages in the area. Tunguska asteroids generally break up just prior to impact with the land, so rain collection systems may be damaged by such an event. If the impact is away from water, groundwater, or bodies of water are likely to remain trusty sources of relief for all that can access them. Food. Stored food or local food supplies may provide secure sources of calories after an asteroid impact. If you can produce your own food locally, even in small amounts, it would be a great relief for you and others. Be aware that asteroid explosions, even if in the atmosphere, may clear out entire fields of plants through the shockwave, heat, and burning. So, outside of a direct impact, you may be able to still grow food on the land around and away from the impact zone. Utility electric. With the utility grid down by the blast, fires, and/or the EMP, the off-gridder may be able to repair her microgrid quickly, especially with EMP-protected parts and equipment in store. For example, if you keep your system's main components in an EMP-proof enclosure or room, You may be able to generate energy after the blast. Again, you may be a point of relief for others, so be ready for that as well. Utility communication. Like energy, the communication grid will likely be damaged by the effects of a direct asteroid blast. Given your antennas survive or could be repaired quickly, and given your communication equipment was stored in EMP-proof cover, you may be able to communicate with the outside world. Catastrophe preparedness. A catastrophe is a major change to any system or person, which brings long-term or permanent disruption. This drastic change can be caused by sudden destruction or rapid shifts in the usual order of business. Catastrophes may also bring widespread death and long-term or permanent change to areas of various sizes. Although catastrophes may harm some species and aid others, or may even bring improvements in some ways down the line, in this context, catastrophes harm the human quality of life. Catastrophes can also be defined as near total or total collapse of a system, environment, or cycle. And these can be multiple. And there may be one or more catastrophes in one or more areas, and they may start and end at different periods of time. Furthermore, when catastrophes start and end may be difficult to determine. There are human-caused and natural catastrophes. There can also be natural crises exacerbated by human activity, which may turn to catastrophes. Examples of human catastrophes are social collapses, financial collapses, political collapses, all of which can devolve into conflict and war. Natural catastrophes may include pandemics, mega-volcanic events, mega-storms, tornado outbreaks, mega-EMPs, extinction-level asteroids, mega-earthquakes, and mega-tsunamis. I add the qualifier mega to these because earlier I classified many of these events in a smaller scale as crises. Apart from destruction, catastrophes may too completely stop systems for a long period or indefinitely, like access to clean water, food production, government, education, healthcare, electricity, etc. For example, a war may stop multiple vital systems in a particular area, cutting people away from many vital sources: water, food, healthcare, transportation, etc. Living off the grid may help you to survive, cope with, and overcome catastrophes. Of course, considering many uncontrollable factors, nothing is a guarantee for anyone during or after a catastrophe. Again, no one can completely break off from every system for long, as supplies will run out and isolation will harm the isolated. But a healthy amount of self-sufficiency and renewable systems can go a long way enabling people to deal with the effects of a catastrophe. First, by ensuring the continued availability of water, food, electricity, and communications. Then, the off-gridder may make ample use of her or his efficient and advanced methods and technologies to emerge from the effects of the catastrophe. As the effects of catastrophes vary depending on the type, here we'll discuss various types of catastrophes, some historical examples, what ill effects they can produce, and how you may benefit from living off the grid during such event. Human-caused catastrophes. War. Wars are human conflicts which turn large and severe enough to organize into violent and opposing factions. War may include various types ranging from local conflicts such as sectarian, gang or race conflicts, to international mechanized warfare involving many nations. Wars are often industrialized and may be national or international or worldwide. I believe war is the epitome of human failure, when humans turn to large-scale lethal violence against each other, to settle disputes, gain territory or resources, or to disable or kill off those deemed threats. War may take many forms now, and war has changed over the centuries. War may be previously announced as attacks are mobilized, and done by surprise. There may be initial attacks or preemptive strikes. A full invasion may take place, where an area is attacked by several methods and waves of attacks may last from days to years. If attacks accomplish their destructive goals, then occupation may ensue. Occupation generally involves the forced disarmament and subjugation of the losing party. The occupying force may control and remain in the area from weeks to indefinite periods. Unfortunately, human history is littered with wars, and we have had a history of increasingly lethal and increasingly larger conflicts. To my knowledge, every epoch and every territory has experienced wars throughout its history. And in most cases, humans have chosen to see opponents almost as different species or races. With few exceptions, wars have had a racial aspect. For example, as I wrote in this book, there is a war between Russia and Ukraine, one brought about by a complex set of geopolitical circumstances and pushed by human egos, fear, arrogance, and racism. The same can be said about the war in Gaza. Militarism, fundamentalist religion, and racism play big roles there, in my opinion. Ultimately, I believe that war was started and is still being fought due to the low priority we still have on the worth of human life, and the still low priority of our shared biology and interest on this planet. And because we still have not embraced the fact that we are the only semi-intelligent species in the universe, as far as we know. Per reports, due to war, many areas of Gaza and Ukraine have completely collapsed and have become uninhabitable. Others are in the process of collapsing, or have partially collapsed. I believe that warring nations will suffer and face collapse in various ways, largely due to their aggression. The situation in those places even carry the risk, more than any other in history, to devolve into nuclear war and genocide. In the perspective of an outside observer, the situation is frankly an embarrassment for our species. The savagery is present and recent when speaking of the US. The nation is involved in warlike attacks in several nations, and just recently waged a brutally long war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Again, the nation of Israel has waged a brutal and long war on the Palestinian population for decades, still slowly devouring their lives, human rights, and territories as I write this. Yemen has been under severe attacks internally from Saudi Arabia and the US since 2014, triggering nationwide catastrophes in that country. Syria has been ravaged by internal and external war since 2011, with a precarious ceasefire in effect since 2020. Just in the mentioned wars and conflicts, there have been several millions of directly related deaths and many millions of indirect deaths. War can bring unbelievable destruction and human suffering to entire nations or widespread areas through catastrophic collapses of water distribution, food production, healthcare, the economy, government, etc. It is needless to say how war can bring innumerable problems to individuals, communities, and entire societies. And apart from death and the severe injury war can inflict on large numbers of people, it can also cause scarcity and unavailability of water, food, shelter, medical care, electricity, and many other critical services in hellish scales. Again, this may occur to widespread areas where it may be extremely difficult to escape for many. And war often triggers mass migrations and displacement, placing many in peril on their journey. Refugees may be exposed to the dangers of fighting and the harsh environment and to abuses from more fortunate groups. The young and old, especially, may suffer and die in greater numbers during war. During and after a war, those living off the grid may greatly benefit you and others due to their skills, stored water, food, and communications. Of course, war may affect even those off the grid with its violence and destruction. Local energy infrastructure, water and food supplies, and means to produce may all be affected by war. In such cases, the off-gridder may still benefit from her or his ingenious methods, efficiency, and experience. Especially the ability to avoid being caught in the crossfire will come handy. Given you remain physically unharmed, you may be able to survive and help others do the same with your off-grid knowledge. The off-gridder may especially benefit during the worst types of war, nuclear and biological. During these types of warfare, the environment outside may be rendered uninhabitable due to radiation and other types of contamination. And the off-gridder may benefit from their ability to harness groundwater and produce food and energy locally and indoors. These possibilities will be detailed in part 3 of this book. But as a preview, hydroponic and greenhouse gardens may produce food indoors, and many animals may be farmed indoors. The ability to remain indoors for extended periods and remain healthy and relatively happy are some of the things that may contrast the off-gridder from those solely dependent on the outside world. With war, there are countless scenarios and possibilities. Humans, seemingly, have found no boundaries on their ability and willingness to bring suffering and destruction to each other. And this is unlikely to stop in the foreseeable future. Perhaps in the distant future, we will unite as a world and realize that we are one species that benefits from the contributions of everyone else, and that violence is counter to that idea. Perhaps one day, somehow, war will not be tolerated nor allowed. political collapse, social collapse, uprisings, and rebellions. Humans often disagree. Disagreements may be severe enough to separate large numbers of people into different factions. Factions can differ in ideology, race, religion, politics, or more, or a combination of these. These factions may organize protests, demonstrations, and riots as ways to bring discomfort and inconvenience to the opposing party, in hopes of bringing them to the negotiating table, make them leave their area, or in some cases annihilate them. Political disagreements may be quite severe, and uprisings, rebellions, or insurrections may occur. These may bring changes that can bring rapid and widespread change to the political and social fabric in an area or nation. These revolutionary changes may bring traumatic outages to many of the goods and services provided by society and government. As mentioned earlier, political and social collapse is the ending or changing of a stable government and/or social system. These may be replaced by another type of system or remain absent for a period of time, sometimes called a failed state. Regions or nations without political and social order often turn violent and destructive, as the law of the jungle generally replaces agreed upon civil laws. Many may die, and cities and towns may be severely disrupted. Property and infrastructure may be damaged through fires, vandalism, and explosions. These may disable utility and other services for various lengths of time, including water, food, and energy distribution. Healthcare and education may be also affected during political and social upheaval. History is littered with short-term and long-term political collapses, social collapses, uprisings, and rebellions. The 20th century saw Europe convulse violently with shifts and changes of its political environment. Many nations ousted their royal overlords and welcomed democracy in various ways, including using violence. The two world wars caused great shifts in political boundaries and social orders. New nations were carved, and some disappeared or were reorganized. These brought massive displacement and suffering changes to millions of people in the continent. Further to the east, Russia had its own revolution that violently and swiftly changed an entire nation in every way possible. Russia transformed from a secluded monarchy to a military-industrial power within 50 years. But the changes necessary for this cost millions of lives and the suffering of many more through war and famine. Later, internal and external forces caused Russia to change its political system again in the late 20th century, bringing, yet again, massive political and social upheaval. Cuba went through similar social and political convulsions in the mid and 20th century, and so did China and Korea. There, the governments changed very suddenly, and deep changes brought massive scarcity and displacement. In the 1980s, Central America had conflicts and war, which caused massive political and social shifts. These caused the displacement of millions of people within the nations and into the US. Poverty, deep scarcity, strife, and violence may follow political and social collapse. Living off the grid to any degree may benefit those involved in war. During and after political and social collapse, it is essential to remain off the streets as much as possible. Violent and desperate individuals may be roaming the streets and other areas looking for victims and resources. Mobs may also be many looking to control areas and resources through intimidation, violence, and coercion. Be aware that during such periods of lawlessness, there may be those willing to kill to control territory and resources. So the off-gridder hopefully will be prepared to the point where she or he could avoid these predicaments. Moreover, the ability to produce may mean longer time off the streets and away from danger. Clearly, in such dangerous times, it would be best to lock yourself in for safety and protection. And if resupply is needed, then venturing out would be a worthy cause. Survival. Again, the off-gridder may benefit not only from the ability to produce, but also from the ability to quickly adapt to the lower available resources, water, food, energy, etc. Even during times of normality, the off-gridder should live efficiently, so that in times such as social collapse, she or he will be prepared and be able to decrease consumption even more. Lastly, the off-gridder may be able to mask her or his off-grid activities, or even their existence, during a period of lawlessness by remaining indoors. And water, food, and energy may be produced with a relatively small footprint, some of which may be indoors. The resourcefulness and creativity of the off-gridder may aid in surviving and thriving during a period of collapse. With luck, if the conflict lasts long, the off-gridder may make peaceful alliances with other peaceful individuals in the area through off-grid communications, and perhaps create a network of advocacy to begin to advocate for peace, order, and civility.